Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin.
Welcome to what is sure to be a really interesting episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm joined today by my youngest son, Colt, who has been a little bit of a part of the podcast, but you haven't heard his voice yet. He's done some editing and stuff, and this time he decided he wanted to interview me for the Q&A, kind of as a practice, because he will be more heavily involved in a future episode you'll hear before long. So, Colt, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
Are you ready to kick this off and read me some questions?
I think I am. If you were a Jedi, what % chance is there that you would misuse the Force?
100. To be honest, I definitely would misuse the Force. Strong sense of justice, don't like rules, independent thinker. Yeah, I'm going to misuse that.
Nice. Same. Morning or evening?
100% morning all day long. My battery light starts flashing around 9 p.m. Definitely a morning person. Something important I got to think about or whatever. And I can get up at 3 o'clock. That doesn't bother me. My mind is sharpest right when I wake up in the morning.
How long do you dunk a cookie in milk?
A long time. I like them soggy. I am fine with them breaking up and eating them out of the milk with a spoon. I want them soggy as hell.
What is the best horse movie?
Lonesome Dove, I think, is the best Western involving horses. I am a little disappointed that the hell bitch who was supposed to be a Kiowa mare was actually a gray gelding, but pretty good horse movie. Lots of good horse scenes. So, yeah.
What skill/technique issue do you not have with a horse that you admire in someone else and wish you did have?
Twofold for me. One is the farrier thing. I've been trimming feet and nailing on shoes for about 15 years now. I still don't consider myself real good at it. I would like to test and learn more and become certified journeyman and become a certified journeyman farrier at some point in my life. I also the bodywork stuff. I very much admire the skills and the eye and some of the things going on there, and I don't know near enough about it and would certainly like to. I don't know if I'll get that done given all the time that it would require and the things I'm already busy with, but those would be the two things that I'm a little jealous of, and others wish I had the superpowers as well.
What do you think is the most important quality of a horseman?
I think it's probably feel and self-awareness. So I know that's not one quality, but self-awareness is a really big deal because you always have to keep that 30,000 foot perspective. And most of the time when we get in trouble, we are staring too much at the tree and forgetting about the forest. And so that's why the self-awareness. But I think you can't get anything done in any discipline worthwhile without feel. When you make the horse bend to your feel rather than you bending to the horse's feel, you either train a wannabe runaway or a robot. And I don't have any desire for either of those.
And here's the one we've all been waiting for. Daniel Dolphin, bay or sorrel?
Buckskin with dark points or dapple gray with dark points. Those are the two beautiful colors of horses in my mind. No ugly colors, but if I'm going to do something just on color, that's what it's going to be.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs, 100%, no question. If it's going to be a cat, it needs to be a big badass cat like a mountain lion or something like that.
What breed of dog would you choose?
I like the working dogs, for sure. The herding dogs, I've had Kelpies and hanging trees, and I really like those. I really like the border collies, although they can be a bit timid and not have enough bite for me which I haven't seen in the Kelpies or the hanging trees. They're pretty darn gritty and tough. I also like in the working dogs. I guess those are herding dogs, not working dogs. But in the working dogs, like bird dogs, we've got an English setter. We've had a couple of English setters. I've had a couple of labs. I really, really do appreciate that type of dog. And dogs with drive, I guess, are my kind. Although the barn mutt that hangs around and is just real chill and everybody can pet, there's something to that. And I also really, really would like a Connie Corso. I have liked them for years and years. And now, unfortunately, they're getting popular and people are probably going to ruin them. But I thought that would be a great dog just for strangers. Pull it up in the driveway. 115 pound, what the hell are you doing in my yard? Kind of gives them pause, whether they're going to get out if I'm out of town, you and your mom are around or whatever.
Feral or spoiled horse?
Feral, no question. Yep.
Least favorite / most favorite barn chore?
I don't know if I have a least favorite. Most of the stuff we do I like pretty well. I like hauling hay. We don't really keep horses in stalls, but I do appreciate the meditative aspect of cleaning stalls. I like fixing fence. Probably the only time I have a least favorite barn chore is when I have something I have to do and there's a time crunch, and so I have to rush through this thing, or I don't really have time to do this thing and get to the next thing, and that's probably the only time I have any kind of dislike of barn chores. Favorite barn chore, kind of the same list. I like hauling hay. I like building fence. I like cleaning stalls. Probably my favorite is feeding. I guess if I had to pick one, because it gives you, I don't rush through feeding horses most of the time. That's a good opportunity to kind of lay eyes and hands on everyone as an individual, check them out, see what they're looking like today, and make sure everybody's doing all right. So I like feeding probably more than anything.
What's your favorite quote of wisdom from a movie?
Favorite quote of wisdom from a movie? Oh, you're putting me on the spot. There's so many one-liners from movies that I love. Probably I'm going to go with, I know something you don't know. I am not left-handed either. Because I very much like to be underestimated and then, wow, here's the winning card you didn't see coming. Bam. So that probably is from The Princess Bride, which of course is the all-time best movie.
I had a feeling you were going to say something from A Princess Bride, but I really thought you were going to say As You Wish or something like that, if you were going to quote it. But, crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Crunchy, all day long. I'm not a huge peanut butter fan, but crunchy.
What's something unexpected about you?
I don't think I've said this before, so I'm going to lay this one out there. When I graduated college, I was still working for a horse trainer that I worked for in college. I didn't move on to my next apprenticing job for a year. And so in that year, I worked part-time starting colts for that guy. I started kind of my own business starting colts, I had already started one or two, but I started taking 8. And wasn't always full. So I mixed mud at a pottery studio for probably 6 months or something like that. I ran a pug mill, and there's a whole lot of people out there eating on plates or drinking in coffee cups of mud that I mixed.
That's new. If you could choose any new skill or superpower or ability, what would you choose?
Flying, hands down, not even close. Absolutely flying. Absolutely. I don't know why there's even an argument here. Invisibility, it's flying, 100% flying.
Do you think you already technically fly when you're riding on a horse? Feels like it.
No, because you're still just 4 feet above the ground. You're not flying. I can't go over the trees in a horse. Unless you're doing, if you've been eating mushrooms behind the barn again, what's going on here?
Thoughts or feelings?
Thoughts, 100%.
What would you have been professionally if not a horseman?
Probably a veterinarian. The engineering thing could have been there too. I really could see that going either way. Beyond that, I don't know. I would have a pretty strong entrepreneurial deal working for myself. I definitely prefer working for myself over working for others. So I would have been working for myself, doing some sort of business like that, but either engineering or veterinary medicine.
Decisive or indecisive?
Decisive.
Favorite piece of tack or a horse-related tool?
I have a custom bit that is going to be made. I'm still on the list, but not far from it. And I have a feeling that is going to be I've got a couple of handmade bits, but none that were made for me. This one will be made for me by my design, and I am imagining by a guy named Wilson Capron. He was on the podcast years ago. Very talented custom bit maker. Art, functional art is really what he makes. So if y'all aren't following him on Instagram or anything, check him out. He does some absolutely gorgeous and functional stuff.
Cold showers or cold food forever?
I take cold showers as it is, but cold food wouldn't bother me too much. I do like that's one of my good rituals. I like to feed horses in the morning, and then I cook myself breakfast. I have a certain little skillet that I use, and I do some kind of a pan sauteed vegetable squash or something like that most of the time, and scrambled eggs, and I eat that for breakfast just about every day. And I like to sit down, eat that breakfast, and watch TV for a little bit and kind of collect my thoughts in the background for the day ahead. So cold showers I do anyway. Having that one hot meal, probably I would appreciate continuing that ritual.
Left or right lead?
Left lead. Not terrible, but I do have to be a little more thoughtful on the right lead. I've already talked about racehorses ruining my posting both ways on the left diagonal, which may well have something to do with my left lead predilection too. And for the follow-up question you don't know to ask, I am right-footed, but reasonably left-footed as well. I played a lot of soccer when I was a kid, and then football and rugby. I was the kicker on the football team, and also I have a more developed kicking leg than most people do, but I am reasonably ambidextrous with my legs too.
Of the many, what is the best smell in the barn?
It's got to be the horse. I mean, hay's pretty dang good. Leather's pretty dang good. I like the smell of grass. After you mow or something, that's a pretty good smell too. Cutting hay. But I think the best smell's got to be the horse.
You said leather's a pretty good smell. Would that be before or after the ride?
If you stick your nose to a saddle after a ride, it's probably going to smell more like ass than leather. So I'm going to go with before the ride.
Yeah, nice. Sweet, salty, or spicy? What's your favorite flavor? What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Okay. So, salty and spicy. I don't have a real strong sweet tooth. My favorite flavor of ice cream, probably my go-to, would be Rocky Road. That's what we get most of the time for at home. But if we're out and about, I do like kind of the bourbon pecan or coffee or some. I like darker flavors, like even beer. I like a Guinness or a stout, something you almost chew that's black. You can't see through it. I like those kind of flavors. So if I can find that in ice cream, that's perfect as well.
What is your favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
Dinosaur is the Triceratops, deep sea creature. I really am pretty drawn to octopuses. I always have been. And by the way, I learned this not too long ago. Octopi is incorrect. That would be if octopus was a Latin root word, which it sounds like it is, but it actually isn't. So the correct plural is octopuses. And I like their intelligence. I follow several people that are marine biologists and keep them in tanks and do experiments and play with them daily and all that kind of stuff. I would love to have a fish tank with an octopus in it at some point. They're not very long lived, so you got a year and a half roughly with them, and then that's that. We have been recommended that movie My Octopus Teacher, which I have not watched yet, but we need to watch in the near future as well.
Sounds good. Have you ever had a UFO encounter?
I have. When I was a teenager, I used to go driving out and about at night in the country. We lived in a real rural place on the Mississippi River levee, a lot of farmland. So I'd go riding on the levee and stuff. And there was one night I was heading back. It was reasonably late, 11 o'clock at night maybe. And I came to a stop sign in the country, which I actually did stop at. And there was a dot in the sky, kind of like a star. And it basically went from right in front of me to the far right part of my windshield, and then down above the horizon back in front of me, kind of like a half, 2/3 of a Z, zip, 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 and did it like blink of an eye. It was here, it was there, it was back to this place, all within a second, and then it was gone. So if that wasn't a UFO, I don't know what the hell it was, but it was kind of freaky.
Mm-hmm. What horse would you choose to ride into battle?
Curly, at this point, yeah. Curly's my old demo horse. He is 22 or 23 this year. He's still sound, but I consider him semi-retired. I only pull him up every once in a while to do something with him. Just let him be a horse. We got the up and coming guys, Willow and Xander. Willow's probably going to be the main replacement. She is real sensitive. The trickier part with her, like Xander got his leg caught in a fence and cut himself up really, really bad. And he's healed up. He's been healed up from that for about a year, but he has a lot of scar tissue, and I'm not yet convinced he's going to be completely sound. But he has the temperament where anybody in the world could ride him. Willow does not have that temperament yet. It'll probably take me years before I could put other people on her, and that's one of the main things I consider important in a demo horse, is that I can go to a clinic and let anyone get on my horse to let them feel this or feel that. So I don't know that Willow is going to fulfill that role anytime soon, but she's got the sensitivity and the feel and all that stuff that I want in a horse, whereas Xander's a little more dull, which is why anybody in the world can ride him. He's not a Ferrari. But
what would be your favorite mythological creature?
So Colt has written a few questions of his own here, and we're on to those now. My favorite mythological creature. That's a big question. Let me think of what all the mythological creatures. Like, honestly, the standout thing to me, and I don't know that this is mythological, but people of my generation will remember a movie called Clash of the Titans that had the little mechanical owl in it. And I don't know why, but that little mechanical owl is what plopped into my head whenever you said mythological creature. Dragons also would have to be way up there. I'll say this little deal. So the barn we're at right now has got some of this shade cloth in a certain area of it, and it's hanging from the roof down to the wall. Okay, so it's vertical. And when we first got here, there were tons of lizards around this barn. And so you would look up and they would crawl on this shade cloth. So you would see the sky behind, and there's a lizard right there. And I was wanting to get some of the umbrella straw cocktail drink deals and cut the umbrella parts up so that they look like dragon wings, and then glue them to some lizards and turn them loose, where when they ran on the shade cloth it would look like a dragon in the sky going across there. I thought that would be absolutely awesome. So dragons would be super cool. Although I do know the reptile brain, they're not real trainable, so whether you could ride and control a dragon, I think that's the biggest myth of it all. But anyway.
If you could pick any trait for your horse to know immediately, what would it be? A new one, a new trait.
I need a little more explanation. What do you mean by a trait to know immediately? That I can recognize in them immediately for them to have, or explain?
Not like a trait, but like maybe like a trick or something that you would like sit down or not lay down.
Okay, so a cue to have them trained on immediately when I get a new horse in. Probably to stand still and like ground tie. That would be pretty handy, because that's one of those things that really, to have it on there, takes a long time. You can get it kind of on there pretty quick, but there are going to be a lot of lapses in between. So if I could snap my fingers and have that solved, that would be pretty handy.
What is a barn chore that you enjoy so much you don't consider it a chore, you just enjoy doing it?
Feeding, probably. Yeah.
How much mayo belongs on a sandwich?
A lot. A whole lot. Both slices. We actually had this talk. We went and had breakfast at Whataburger this morning, and I don't remember. I think you brought it up. But my dad, Grumpy, you were with him, and you had eaten your whole sandwich or something, and then you drank a whole bunch. And he made a comment, and like, I am take a sip of drink with about every bite, and you and your mom will both, like savages, eat everything and then drink afterwards. And I don't know if y'all have more saliva than I have or whatever, but I need moisture along with like a sandwich, so that's part of what the mayonnaise facilitates. But I like mayonnaise a lot. So
Flat ground or mountains?
Mountains. Yeah, I've lived most of my life on fairly flat ground, and I guess we'll say this: the moisture is the thing of it. Like, we have frequent mud because the water sits and holds everywhere, where the mountains don't get near as much moisture, so they have their own different set of problems. But if I didn't have to deal with mud nearly as often, that would make my heart glad. And so having gravity pull that water away from you, of course, when you want to grow stuff, we grow things way faster than they do too, because all that moisture sits there and soaks into the ground. But I could use a decade away from flat ground. Yeah.
If you had a real lightsaber, how would you use it? Like to carve a turkey, or to cut hay ropes, which probably wouldn't be a good idea. Something like that.
Oh, I would use it all the time. I would probably within the first day be missing a leg or something like that as well. Cut trees down. Like, I wouldn't buy sliced bread anymore. I would buy bread in a loaf and slice it myself. I would, all the time. This is probably, we talked about misusing the Force. Probably using a lightsaber to cut bread is on that list, but I'm, 100% going to be guilty of that.
I'm going to start being Chewbacca now, huh? Do you break your pasta?
Do I break my pasta, like putting it in water? Yeah. I do not.
How do you like your coffee?
As dark as my thoughts. I do prefer dark roast. I don't add a lot of cream or sugar. So here's my one coffee quirk, I guess. Coffee's too damn hot, like coming out of the pot or whatever. So I need something to cool it down 20 degrees so I can actually drink it. And so I use milk or cream or whatever for that, for the most part. If I go to like McDonald's where they don't have a ready supply of that, I actually get a little ice in the lid and put it in my cup, and that's the main thing I need with my coffee is to cool it down so that it's not 287 freaking degrees. Why they think coffee needs to be that hot, I don't know, but I can't drink that, so.
Do you think horses enjoy and actually like being around you, or any other person for that matter? Or they just tolerate you because they like getting fed?
Both. I mean, that depends on the individual. So I would say kind of your first goal, like you get a new horse in, is probably getting them to tolerate you. If they can't tolerate you, then they certainly can't like you. But I think we're all aiming for a horse that genuinely enjoys our company, and that's definitely possible. Most of the time, there are some horses that get pretty soured to people, and maybe the highest thing we're going to attain after that is tolerance. But yeah, that's definitely typically an achievable goal for a horse to enjoy your presence and your company.
Imagine you only have 5 minutes to get a professional message out there to help as many people and horses as possible. What would you say to them?
5 minutes is, it's all about the tongue. Don't offend the tongue. Slow everything down. Slow is fast. That is a literal statement. Make sure that you are connected to the horse before you start asking the horse to do a whole bunch of stuff. So that's kind of the rapport building thing. If you pick up the reins on a new horse and it doesn't bend left, going fast left is not the thing you need to do. You need to just pause right there and jiggle the rein a little and get their attention and get them to coming around and feeling of you and building some rapport before you go fast. A lot of times that's 5 minutes, and it changes the whole relationship for the rest of your lives. And I have seen way too many times where people get on a horse and they try to treat the horse like they've been riding him for years and they're very familiar, and they go try to do something hard and fast right away, and the horse braces up, and it again changes the relationship and sets the stage. You can get a horse not liking you in 5 seconds. So how you approach that first 5 seconds and that next 5 seconds and the 5 seconds after that's pretty darn important. So slow down, like for real, slow down. Use your legs, use your seat. That's a whole lot of stuff. Self-awareness. Like there are some moods that I'm in where I know I better not go work a horse right now because I'm in a bad mood. And nothing good's going to come of this. So go fishing instead or something and get your head right. That's okay. Keep a sense of humor. And remember, this is supposed to be fun.
Looks like we have a new record in the house. I award you 6,345.5 points. Would you rather an awkward silence or a genuine compliment?
I'm going to throw you a curveball here because I always say awkward silence. But since you're not good at complimenting people, I'm going to make you compliment me. Give you a little... That's why I made this question, because I'm not good at complimenting people, so I forced myself to have to do it. So, welcome to my hell.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw this out there and just not have anything to do with horses. I love your sandwiches. One time we got him a muffalata kit for Christmas. And you like muffaladas so much, so we got you that muffalata kit, and you made some of the best muffaladas ever. And I totally agree with your mayonnaise point. That is the perfect amount of mayonnaise to put on a sandwich.
Okay, I'm going to pretend that my sandwich's compliment is not hurtful at all. Thank you so much for all of the things you could have said, and choosing fucking sandwiches is the one thing to compliment your dad on. All right, I'm going to just cry in the corner over here.
Now we're going to move on to the Q&As that people who listen to the podcast have written for you. Any plans for a video subscription coming?
Yes, we will be doing that later this year. I don't know when. We're kind of wrapping up shooting some stuff for the bit course right now, to kind of finalize that, and I've been having some trouble capturing a few important specific camera angles or scenes that I'm trying to illustrate, and it's just been plaguing me. We've spent weeks on this and not captured it yet, so I got to get that wrapped up, and then we'll get into shooting more of that kind of content, and then do the subscription thing where we're putting out content weekly for people on the website. So that should be coming this summer, before very much longer.
Have you ever had a horse so spoiled it wasn't worth the effort to work with?
Yes, is the short answer to that. When we say it wasn't worth the effort, a lot of people are going to hear that as kind of the humanity side of things. The reality side of things is what I'm always dealing with. And when we say worth the effort, to me, generally, we're talking economics. It costs money to train a horse. I have done a lot of philanthropic work, shall we say, through the years, but you can fill your barn up with free horses. So if we're looking at a minimum of $1,000 a month to train a horse, and there are horses out there that have 6-month problems, 8-month problems, year-long problems, that's how I look at it. If we spend, let's even negate what you already have in this animal. If we spent $10,000 in training, and our best case scenario is at the end of that you have a $2,000 horse, am I going to advise a customer to do that? And the answer is no. So I have played with horses and got to a point where it's time to have a conversation with the customer, and you say, look, I don't know this one's going to make it or within this timeline, and here is why I think that, and here are the economics of it. And so if you have $5,000 or whatever we're figuring it is that you want to invest into this, and you understand that this is not you're going to get your money back kind of scenario, and you can afford to take that amount of money and set it on fire, and it's not going to change your life, then I will proceed. But if this is going to put you in a financial strain, if this is going to be that kind of a problem, then this horse is not what I advise doing that on. And the unfortunate reality is that, yes, there are scenarios where that is what's happening. Sometimes that's physical. So, you may have a horse that just isn't very sound, and if we push him physically to do the work to fix the problem, he's not going to physically be able to handle the things that we're going to need to do to work him enough to solve the problem. So, there are a lot of cases where we just don't have the ability to get there from here. But to me, that is mostly a financial decision. If we put this amount of money in this horse, is the horse going to be worth that amount of money? And so if the answer to that's probably not, I need the customer to understand that and acknowledge that at the beginning, so that we didn't just waste a lot of money they couldn't afford to waste. So that's just the unfortunate reality. It's also a big chunk of burnout in trainers. There's probably not a trainer out there that hasn't had that kind of uncomfortable discussion, or a customer that got mad at them because they wound up losing money on a horse because they put all this money in it, and then when they went to sell it, they couldn't get their money back. So it's stressful. It's not fun. And so to my mind, that needs to be done ahead of time, and everybody's on the same page and acknowledges this is a risk worth taking or is not.
Miss Nicole Schaup turned in this question for us to answer. I have a client horse that doesn't drop manure during sessions. Her owner has mentioned that she doesn't for hours at shows as well. She's cowbred and tense about work. In your experience, is this normal?
So, no. I would expect that that's a horse that's holding more tension than it should, and I would tend to be working on those things. I actually consider pooping as part of the body language calming signals. For geldings, that can be urinating as well. So we'll talk a little bit about those. But so this would be a horse I would probably focus some time and energy into the down regulation stuff, where we're going to rev up the RPMs and then let the horse calm down. Where I tend to see, or when I tend to see horses poop, is when we have stressed them and they have kind of dealt with it, and now we're on the downhill side. So if you think about the most common example there is trailer loading. So there's always a little anxiety. We load them in the trailer, they get in the trailer, they relax, and boom, they poop. And so that's kind of where I'm drawing this from. It's not at all uncommon to be doing other things with horses that stress them, and when they kind of crest the hill and we're on the downhill and they're starting to handle it and deal with it and process it, then they'll let go. So if this horse is not doing that for hours and hours at a time, then that's abnormal. Just to give y'all an idea, a horse should poop like 12 to 20 times a day. So once every hour to 2 hours, think of it like that. And so if this horse is going 5 and 6 hours without pooping, that's unusual. So some other things like that, some horses won't drink with people around. I view that as a parasympathetic, lacking in parasympathetic response, because that's related to digestion. So if you have kind of that tense, braced horse that has a wall up, then these are the kind of things that I would look at. I've also seen horses that wouldn't sleep around people, and by that I mean like full on lay out on the ground and so forth. And so if you're, say you get a Colt in, there was a trainer I was helping with him over the phone with a Mustang problem not that long ago, and this had been a horse that had been through multiple other trainers first, and we did some work on laying the horse down and all of that, and she laid him down, and the next morning she goes out to feed, and he is laid out doing actual sleep on his side, full on. She'd already had him for a month. Neither she nor the owner had ever seen the horse do that, and so that's a huge sign that they have let some stuff go and now can down regulate. So we talk about licking and chewing and ears and head high or low and that, but there's a lot more to it in terms of a horse showing us that they're comfortable. So I would definitely include pooping on the list. That's a good observation, Nicole, for you and your customer. And so I would look for geldings that won't pee. Also, actually with Maddie in Colorado, we had one at the Breakthrough. We were mostly working with her 2 horses on this kind of stuff, down regulating, releasing tension, getting more comfortable and confident. And one of those horses, she said, had never peed with her, and he peed with her on the 2nd or 3rd day while we were there working. So it's not a real commonly talked about aspect of it, but I would definitely put that in the class of calming signals and things that kind of do show us on that map, you are here. And it's a good thing to see, and it's noteworthy if you're not seeing it.
Marcia Kennedy said, "What are some things you like to see and know before starting the horse under saddle?"
So, to be honest, it's more things I don't want to see. I am perfectly comfortable taking horses in that aren't halter broke or haven't been touched and starting them under saddle. So I have a pretty basic list. If you're going to raise your own colt, I want to see that they are gentle enough where you can catch them and put a halter on them, and that like the farrier has been able to trim their feet a few times, and so we don't have terrible feet to manage and try to get in shape as we're starting a horse. They've been dewormed, vaccinated, all of those basic things. Beyond that, I really don't care for much. I really think less is more. This is not to apply to everybody, of course, but most of the time when people, the more they mess with their young horses, the more of a problem that actually is. And there are things now that have to be fixed. I think I've mentioned before, like in the 90s when I starting a lot of horses, that was when John Lyons came out, and that was when the trend of people trying to start their own colts happened. And I got real quick where I started doing all the first saddlings and first mountings and everything from the right, because I had a blank slate on the right, and because so many people had messed things up on the left. And now it was, you know, it's messing some things up is way worse of a position to have a horse in than blank slate. So if you're gonna be out there on your own without some really experienced good help, you're probably better off, your horse is better off if you just leave well enough alone and either do that with good guidance or have someone that's experienced. No, because you can change the course of a horse's life with a bad first week. So
Miss Patricia was wondering, in your podcast with Miss Maddie, you said you were still developing your feel. Is it possible to describe your most recent breakthrough or realization on feel and what the next one looks like?
So I'm not good at that sort of thing. The managing and remembering milestones. I don't really. My brain just doesn't work that way. What I will say in terms of in terms of me still working on my feel and the mistakes that I have, it's that I misread horses at times. Sometimes I think this is going to go this way, and I'm expecting that, and then it goes a little differently. I would say it's probably fair to say that the mistakes that I make are kind of more on the micro side, and so most people wouldn't even see the kinds of things that I'm talking about, but it's just in little instances where, you know, I'm anticipating something and something else happens, and sometimes I'm pretty sure that it's going to go this way and it goes the other way, and then I have to adjust. So for instance, there are times when I'm asking for something and I would have released on that, but I wasn't ready for it, and so I miss one. And I'm good enough about when I miss one, I recognize that I missed it, and I don't come in late or whatever. I just pretend like that didn't happen and wait for the next one and sharpen up a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of feel and timing. You know, timing is the big part of it. That's, to me, the feel aspect of it isn't all that complicated. Like I described that in the bit video and the bit course and all as playing the hot or cold game. So that's kind of what feel is. You're through the rope or the rein or whatever, you're telling the horse constantly. In every 10th of a second, you are telling that horse you're getting warmer, you're getting colder, and guiding them toward the thing. And it doesn't matter what the thing is, right? It could be picking your foot up, it could be speeding up, it could be slowing down, it could be whatever. You are constantly giving them tacit feedback. You're getting warmer, you're getting colder. That is true with direct pressure, that is true with indirect pressure, and that's part of the thing you have to be self-aware of. So that's how I view feel. The timing part of it is trickier because I think to have good timing, you do have to have the anticipation. You have to have seen enough horses move that you know how they move and where they're likely to go here, so that you are kind of ready. I almost view it like my release is a cocked trigger, and whenever they move their foot left, whatever the thing is, I'm looking for that specific thing, and then that trips the hair trigger and they get the release. And so to me, the timing part of that is the hard part, because you have to kind of know exactly what's coming before you know what to release on. And that's the part I see people having the most trouble with. And that is in tenths of a second. Like I said, we have a whole, I'll link it in the show notes. We've got a whole YouTube video on that. But basically it boils down to, and there is hardcore research on this. I paraphrase the numbers a little bit, but you're not good enough to make hundredths of a second's a difference. But you have about a quarter of a second to release. If you are later than that, their comprehension falls off like a cliff. If you're as late as 3/4 of a second with a release, then their comprehension of cause and effect there falls off 80%. And so, like, we have people that'll say, you know, if a horse bites you, you have 3 seconds to turn around and pop him. You do not have 3 seconds. If you hit him 3 seconds later, he has no clue why you hit him. It has to be almost instantaneous. And so that is timing. And man, that's the thing to work on more than anything else. That's the part people will be 30 years in the business and still not have good timing.
Jillian was wondering if you could do a podcast on people doing embryo transfers with recipient mares more often now. I personally am curious how this will affect the horse industry, as I feel like we are affecting the gene pool negatively by having mares having multiple babies per year. Sometimes the same mare and sire combination, plus affecting the cost of horses, because these embryo transfer foals are going to cost a lot more money due to how much money it took to make them in the first place.
Okay, so embryo transfer is not super new anymore. That was cutting edge stuff back in the 90s. I was fortunate to kind of see the beginnings of that. So in the 90s, you were a minimum of 10 grand to do the ET work, and then you had like stud fee and all those other costs on top of it. So as happens with a lot of technology, it gets both better and cheaper. All right. So in terms of like accounting for inflation and all of that stuff, you can get ET work done significantly cheaper than you could have 30 years ago now. And it's better, the rates are better of conception, all of that stuff. So I actually did a pretty extensive paper and talk on this in college. I am for it, and that's predominantly because ET is a embryo transfer, and kind of all of the reproductive work. It empowers the mare side of the pedigree. So like, I know a lot of trainers have gone through this. You'll get a local hero stallion around you that you don't really like, and they mass produce him, and you wind up having to ride 100 of his colts. And they're, a stallion can easily have hundreds of colts. A mare might have 10. And so we've kind of over-empowered the male side of the pedigree and undervalued the female side in terms of that. Or not undervalued, that's a bad word. But so if we can take this superior mare, and now she can have 20 colts, 30 colts, 40 colts, we have put some very good superior genetics out there into the world. And I'm in favor of that. And just like with the ET work, what happens there isn't that the horses get more expensive. This is why the AQHA and some other organizations are protective of this, and they're litigious about not letting it get too common. What happens is supply and demand. We now have a greater supply of these horses, and so the price comes down. And you're only doing ET work on expensive horses. Like, you're not doing this on backyard stuff. So when you have these mares that have won a bunch and now they can have even more babies, I'm in favor of it. In terms of the genetic diversity or lack of diversity. I mean, yeah, there's things there you have to be watching out for. I think we're more aware of that. I mean, the 5-panel testing, fixing to be 6-panel testing and all of that stuff. Now, even the most cutting edge people couldn't have had that on their plate 20 years ago because it didn't exist. We didn't understand all of that. So that's getting better and better and better. And so I think we can smartly utilize tools like this to improve the population. Now, again, this was not something you're going to spend the money on for just every horse. So I think it has an awful lot of potential for improving horses. Now, where I get a little different is like with the cloning and that kind of stuff. To me, that crosses a little bit more of a line of playing God, and I'm not nearly as comfortable with that. So that could be a way longer discussion there. But in terms of embryo transfer in mares, I think it's a really exciting tool, and I think, there's tons of mares out there that I wish had 50 babies and 60 babies instead of 3. And so I like that possibility. And I think it puts even more onus on the stallion side, because that's one thing I would say. There are more stallions out there than there should be. There are horses that in my opinion shouldn't have made that cut that are out there breeding. And those are, degrading the gene pool, not upgrading it. And so if we can help those things in any way, then I'm all for it. I don't think, like, horse numbers are down, breeding is down in general by significant margins, like 40% over the last 17 years. So I don't think we're in any danger really in terms of the gene pool. There's enough horses out there still that the horses they're going to pay the money to do this with are not going to overpopulate or anything like that. So I don't think there's really a downside or a danger to it, in my opinion. And again, the people that are taking advantage of this kind of stuff, they're the most educated people in the business. So they're going at this with their eyes open, making matches for, they're looking for freaks, really. They're trying to become the new pinnacle of the business. So even if they fail, they're still going to produce some damn nice horses. So I'm for it.
Jillian also wants to know how to get started and any tips for teaching children under the age of 10 getting started on horses.
Yeah, so I've worked with a good many kids that are younger, and I've raised mine. I would say the very first thing about that concerns me is safety. So I'm going to say right up front, I'm a pretty strict dad. And a big part of that is because my 2 sons were literally raised in a barn, and in a barn that had a bunch of green horses and problem horses in it. And so it has always been the case around here, like if I say no or I say stop or whatever, the words right fucking now are implied on the end of that. Like, you don't take 4 more steps if I have told you to stop, I don't care what, because it could be the end of you. And so that's a pretty big deal for me with kids around a barn. If we have kids that don't know how to listen or whatever, then we need to be very, very selective about areas they can get to and what horses they're around and so forth. So that's a big deal to me. I've had plenty of people that have brought their kids to the barn, and I can't relax with their non-listening kids running around here with all the things they could get hurt on. So that being said, let's assume we have created the safe area. We have only the kind of horses that can take a kid climbing up their leg, tied up around here and so forth. We need to keep everything short and fun. So you didn't specify, you said kids under 10. Like, both of my boys have been riding since before they could walk. We had a thing called a Snuggie, which is like a kind of a backpack you put a kid in, and I would put them in there when they were months old and ride around with them, and they would fall asleep and get lulled by the rocking of the horse walking around and stuff. I've even done a clinic wearing a kid as a backpack before, and they loved it. And I will say that they have been riding independently. I would put a Makati on their pony, and so I had the Makati rein, the rein part of it, and they had their loop rein. They both have been independently riding that pony with me, going on trail rides and stuff since they were 2.5 or something like that. My general rule would be to keep things short and sweet and fun. What I will also say is that I have been very surprised, not just with my own kids, but with other kids, at how long they actually can ride. So, like, both of my sons did 5 and 6 hour trail rides when they were 2 and 3 years old. And it was not a problem. It wasn't like I was pushing them. It was like they were like, no, let's not go back yet. I still want to keep riding. So, as long as it's fun, Now, I do think if we're going to do this in a round pen, like, that's not going to be as fun for as long. So maybe we're talking 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I know Colt, who's here with me now, when he was probably like 7 or 8, he became a real pain in the butt because he would want me to saddle up a horse for him, and he'd ride for 5 minutes and then he would be done. And I was ready to kick his little hiney for making me spend that time catching a horse and saddling him up for him to ride for a few minutes. But it is what it is. I do try to implement some stuff with them that is important. Maybe you only get one thing done each day, but the safety stuff, to me, safety stuff involves from the beginning reading the horse. This is kind of where I started with the clinician thing. I had a niece, I think she was 7 or 8 at the time. She was taking riding lessons at an English stable here, and they were teaching her posting on the correct diagonals and all this equitation stuff, and hadn't taught her anything about how to not die around a horse. And she wound up almost dying around a horse. And so that was kind of the wake-up call that got me to doing what I do. So controlling the horse, reading the horse, understanding things. I have little kids. They all have to give the horse a middle name, because there can be times when, just like mom fusses at you and your middle name comes out, you may need to do that with the horse. They all tend to enjoy having the middle name. I make sure they all learn to back the horse up. And the most important thing when you back the horse up is that every time they take a step, you go beep, beep, beep. So we keep it fun. They giggle a whole lot, but they do learn some actual skills and their balance and controlling the horse and all of that. And so that's how I would be. Now, of course, the bar, I don't try to get real technical with a little kid, but boy, their little brains are sponges. Like the beep, beep, beep thing, they will learn to count steps and feel the feet so much faster than an adult will. It's not even funny. So I'm absolutely going to take advantage of that. And I just think if someone had gotten their hands on me when I was 5 and actually taught me how to ride, the things I was learning when I was 22, when I was 5, then where would I be right now? So I don't hide the stuff from them, but I don't cram it on them either. We keep it fun. We do pool noodle sword fights, all kinds of little games incorporated in it, jokes. I do have in my phone, I keep a folder of amygdala hijack questions, so it's inevitable that kids are going to get scared. Something's going to happen, and they're going to have a little meltdown, or if they're just young and don't have control of their emotions yet, they may have a meltdown anyway. And so the amygdala hijack questions are things that are going to snap them out of that. So I wouldn't want to go into a young kids clinic or lesson without having looked at that folder, and I've got 2 or 3 of those on hand. So it's stuff like, would you eat a bowl of crickets for $40? Or the Superman joke of, did his glasses doctor know that a fart joke is always awesome to have on hand, because male or female, little kids laugh at fart jokes, and you can pull them out of tears in a hurry with stuff like that. So that would be super important to me to be ready and on hand. So that's about all I can think of for kids at the moment.
Miss Emily Lewis would love to hear more on how small-time trainers should manage their day, from time management and customers hanging out all the way to boundaries and how many horses you can realistically work in a day.
Okay, so that'll be kind of customized to you, and I don't know what your day looks like. When I was riding horses by myself, I could do about 15 in a day. That would depend somewhat on, I wouldn't take 10 colts in to start the first week, because that would throw those numbers way, way off. But if I'm starting 2 or 3 colts a week, and then everything else is second, third, fourth, fifth week, then I'm riding probably on average 45 minutes ahead a day. No, that's not an 8-hour day. So that kind of all depends on the math for you. I think it's perfectly legit to have some alarms in your phone or something that lets you know 45 minutes has passed. I get pretty time blind. So if I have things coming up, I have to set alarms. The boundaries thing with customers, I'm not good about that myself. My wife would be laughing her butt off if she heard that I was being asked to give someone advice on that, because I'm pretty notorious for trying to sign off on a phone call with somebody, and then 15 minutes later I've said, okay, well, that's gone on about 15 times and I'm still talking to them. So if I am in a bind, I will do this. I will tell them at the beginning of the phone call or interaction, I only have 5 minutes here, so we're going to have to make this quick. If it's more than a 5-minute phone call, then we need to do this another time or another day. Social media is probably the biggest time sponge for me, and I do try to remind myself that I don't have to answer this question right now. I check in on it, and it's okay to postpone that and get back to them in 6 hours or something when it is a more convenient time, or after dark, or maybe it starts raining this afternoon and I wind up with 20 minutes I can't do anything, or whatever. So I do think you need to kind of plan your days and be smart about that. And but I don't know enough about what your world may look like to give you much more advice than that. And then you may have kids and a family and all that kind of stuff where you have to be done at 5 or can't start till 10, or I don't know what your situation might be. But it is legitimate to tell a customer, I'm sorry, but I don't have any time for you right now. This is going to have to wait. Can we schedule that or something? And again, I'm not great at that myself, but there you go.
Miss Patty is wondering, when I am in the role of a student taking a riding lesson, I have found that almost every single instructor/trainer I have ridden with over the years talks incessantly, giving me no time to do, let alone soak on what it was asked of us. Before I can even do what they ask for something else. I think about the action chain of hearing what the instructor says, comprehending, translating into my body action, and then me needing to do all the same things for my horse to understand the ask. It simply can't be done with rapid fire instructions and leads to frustration in the rider and horse. What is the hurry from instructor's point of view? How can the rider push some accountability back on the trainer to teach the student in front of them at their pace and style of learning?
Okay, so one thing I'm going to say is that there are plenty of people in this business that are good with horses and not with people. I would put myself on that list. I have had to work much harder at the teaching people side of this than at the horse side of this. So you're absolutely correct there. I've seen it, and people need soak time too. I think this kind of is a good part of clinics, because like a big part of my clinics, I'll demonstrate something and then we'll put everybody in little groups of 2 or something, and they'll work on it, and then I float around to this group and that group, blah, blah, blah. And so everybody gets me with attention on them and saying things to them for 2 or 3 minutes, but they also get me walking away and giving them 20 or 30 minutes to play with that. And in a lesson, you're going to have 100% of that instructor's focus. I would say 2 things. One, I've talked about this before, but, and I'm not doing like weekly lessons with a lot of people except for on our virtual lessons, but if I'm doing a lesson with somebody and I'm probably not going to see them for a month or 6 months, I don't really view that lesson necessarily as the time for them to improve. I probably am going to throw a lot at them, and they're going to get the recording of it and the notes, and what I've really given them is homework. So the time for you to soak on it, process it, play with it isn't during our lesson, it's after our lesson. Now that may not be what these people are doing with you, but I think that is a legitimate way. You don't need to master this now. You just need to become aware of the left-hand thing that you're going to read notes on, and then you're going to play with the left-hand thing next week. So that's kind of how I look at that stuff. I do that with clinics too. You come to a clinic, you've got 6 months worth of homework after the clinic to go home and play with. I think in the course of a lesson, let's say you're working with the same instructor weekly, like that's a legitimate discussion to have with them beforehand. Again, most of these instructors are horse trainers who are trying to give their horse knowledge to a person, but they're not people trainers. They're not educators necessarily. And so like this is something I have spent a good bit of time studying, the different ways people learn. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I still don't feel like I know 1% of it in terms of recognizing it in people without asking them or something. So, I mean, some people learn visually. They can watch a video and they'll pick it up. Some people can hear it spoken and they will pick it up. Some people, if you say it to them, they're not going to understand it at all. Some people, you need to walk up there, you put your hands on their hands and you move their hand here and you pull on the rein like this, and then they're going to go, oh. And so you have your tactile learners, and most people are some combination thereof. So if you can tell your instructor, look, I learn like this, and if you're going to give me this instruction to do, like, you need to let me play with that for a few minutes. I am that way myself. If we are doing something that requires my focus and you won't shut up, I'm gonna say something to you. Like, I'm not gonna be very nice about it. You can tell me what to do, but then you need to let me do it. And so I have to be handled that way. And if I were doing instruction, I would make that clear to the person helping me ahead of time so that they understood what was going on. And then I'm kind of going to say, okay, I think I have that. Do you have anything further to add to what you just watched me do or whatever? So it's your lesson. You're paying for it. They should be catering that to you, in my opinion, and trying to customizing it to you. I would assume in all of these instances, this isn't done on purpose or malicious. It is done via ignorance. And so the solution to ignorance is education. So just make it known and let them know what you would like to see, how you would like to see things done and explained. And if you need a minute, it's okay to say, hey, I need a minute. And I do think, especially with people, if you pre-warn and you let them know, hey, I have this expectation or this weakness or this strength or whatever, and so when we get here, I want to handle it this way, and they know that that's coming, then they don't get personally offended by it when it occurs, because you kind of warned them. So that's how I would tend to approach that. And you don't owe anyone an apology for how you are. Like, if you just aren't a person that learns in this manner and you need it done or said this way, and then left alone to play with. That just is how you learn, and they should cater to that, not the other way around. So.
Deb's Horse World is wondering, how do you guys handle kids and the ranch?
So we kind of talked about this a minute ago, but there is some pretty strict discipline around here. There are hard no things that you just never, ever, 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 ever do. Leaving gates open and things like that. So we are pretty strict on those sorts of things. I've definitely found we get a lot of compliments on the kids when they go out into the world, that other adults appreciate the fact that they do listen, where most kids nowadays don't. So I think that's, well, we'll leave all social statements out of it, but I unapologetically am a strict dad for reasons of safety and other. They work. They have chores. Colt here is the evening feeder now, so even though I like to feed horses, it is his job in the evenings when he gets back to the barn after school that he's going to feed horses in the evening. And that's rain or shine, uncomfortable, got a lot of homework, whatever. He's got to get that done and make it happen. And then I get to come behind him, and if he didn't water or whatever, you know, we make that happen. And he thinks that he's just feeding horses. He doesn't realize he's learning life skills and responsibility and building character and all the stuff that I'm actually concerned with. The same, I mean, they fix fence, they do chores. I do actually try to, particularly at the age, Colt just turned 13, so kind of at this stage, he's worked with me and done a bunch of stuff. So if it is something that I feel like he has a snowball's chance in hell of being able to physically accomplish, I'm going to tend to give him the task and then walk away. So a little bit like what Miss Patty just said. At this point, it's his responsibility, and I think you can handle this or close enough, figure it out, and I'm not going to micromanage you and teach you all of that stuff. You already have kind of been taught. I think you have the tools to pull this off. You just need to put the effort in. And I'll say sometimes he comes and shows up, and he says, hey, I'm stuck, or I'm lazy, and I'm going to use this as an excuse for why I didn't finish the task. And then I remind him through a series of questions that you do, in fact, have the tools and skills and knowledge to have done this, and you're just being a lazy turd right now, and you could have completely gotten this done, so get your butt out there and finish it now. I do remind him, so I'm pretty big on this. Again, unapologetically, when I ask him to do something, as I'm staring him in the eyes as I'm telling him this, the words right fucking now are implied at the end of every sentence. If I didn't say them out loud, that was just me being nice. But when I say jump, I mean now. So put your phone down and go water horses or whatever the thing is. And again, I think that's training for life. Like, you know, they need to be responsive and understand the difference between wants and needs. You need to go water the horse. You want to play on your phone, and one of these is a lot more important than the other. And so I think the ranch is just an opportunity to teach those kinds of life lessons to kids.
Deb's Horse World is also wondering, what is the protocol for visitors and interlopers on your land?
So visitors, I don't do any walk-ins kind of stuff here. I make sure even if a customer has a horse here in training, when they come by to visit, that needs to be pre-planned. I did not used to be that way, and honestly, if I was just a pure training operation, I really wouldn't mind being that way again. But right now, somebody could pull up and I'm in the middle of a 3-hour podcast or something, and I can't come ride your horse for you right now. And it just has become too impossible to make that kind of stuff work. So for me, everything has to be scheduled. If I have people that just pull up out here, which does happen, I'm probably not super friendly. I don't want them to feel like yeah, just show up anytime you want. And if I'm not here, go ahead and go start petting on the horse or whatever. I kind of want it well known that this is not just a public show up and do whatever you want kind of place, which is kind of why I wish I had the Connie Course's Big Bean Scary Dog to keep people away for the most part. It's just not that kind of world. People don't understand about horses, and so I would rather not have that. If we do have that kind of a lesson, like I've had people bring a kid here for a lesson and bring their 3 or 4 siblings as well, you are not welcome to just have the run of the place. Like, I'm going to be focused on your kid in the round pen here, but your other 3 need to be here too. They can't just run through the barn and bang on things and swing sticks and whatever. Like, that's not welcome. So it kind of is a place of discipline within boundaries. And, that's not just for the health and safety of the horses. That's for the health and safety of the people as well. I do have a big sign, no hand feeding of treats. We're not starting those sorts of habits and things around here. It's my bat, my ball, my stadium, and we do it my way, period, full stop, again, unapologetically. So that's kind of how that goes with me.
Miss Tana is asking, I'd love to hear your thoughts about why do you think there are so many more women than men owning horses in the U.S., and why horse ownership is declining? And what will those 2 facts mean for the future of horses/horsemanship? And if you think there are things that could be done to turn that around. If you could change one thing in the horse world, what would it be?
Okay, on the male-female side of that, I'm not sure that really has been a change. I think the statistic has been, for the last 30 years that I'm aware of, it has been about 80% of horse owners are women. So it's been a majority deal since. I'll say that there's probably more women that are in the hobbyist side of it. So the trail rider, the owns one horse for pleasure, where men are more involved is normally in the professional side. So if a guy has horses, he may have 20 and they're all in training to do racing, or it's a breeding operation. So where I do see men in it, they tend to be one owner, many horses, whereas women tend to be one owner, one horse, 2 horses, that kind of thing. Certainly not always true, but often that's the case. So, for instance, I would say while 80% of horses are owned by women, I have probably had at least a 50-50 split in terms of customers. And most of my long-term multiple customers have been men. They're, raising babies year after year after year, and I'll start 30 horses for this one customer, where the lady will breathe a one-off, and then she'll keep that horse for the next 20 years, and I'll never see her again in terms of starting a colt or something. So, anecdotally, that would be my experience. Why is horse ownership declining? I mean, I think that's partly a societal thing. You have the cost increasing significantly in horses. We've got, more and more people in urban areas, and so horses are going to be absurdly expensive in an urban area, or we're going to have the inconvenience of the horses 45 minutes away, and it's a 3-hour ordeal to go ride for an hour. And so I think that factors in general. I really think the financial side of it is the major driving factor on the decline in horse ownership. And I think there's no good news on the horizon. I think the next big thing we're going to have to deal with here is the shortage in veterinarians. And that's coming in the next 10 years or so, and it's going to be a significant change. And that also means prices are going to rise on the vet care side of horses, and that's already pretty high. And I'm not saying that it isn't justifiable what vets charge, but the basic statistic is that about 1%, so 1 out of 100 vet school students are, at this point in time, are focusing on equine or large animal. And within 5 years of graduating and starting to practice, half of those have switched over to dog and cats because they make more money, frankly, with dogs and cats. And economics can't be ignored. What is going to have to change to make them stay in the equine side? Their salaries are going to have to go up until the money that they can make becomes attractive enough that they stay with it and they don't have to give up a good living in order to work on horses. And so that's coming whether we like it or not. Now, on the plus side, we also have a world where there are a lot of alternative modalities. Dentistry would be one of them, where we've got people that are now specializing and focusing on something that only vets used to do. And that's not always legal at this point. I think we're going to come to a point again where that's going to have to be dealt with. And some of these alternative modalities, the chiropractors, the dentists and all, there's going to have to become a hard and fast and legitimate legal pathway for those people to exist, whether the vets like it or not, because there simply aren't going to be enough vets to go around. And in my experience, most of the vets I personally know are pretty open to that. It seems to be mostly their lobbies and the official organizations that represent them that are super litigious about that stuff and are keeping it at bay. But like I say, I don't think that's a sustainable position for the near future. And other countries have dealt with that in similar manners. So, I don't know if that fully and adequately answers your question. We have, I would also say here, I've been pretty vocal about fearing for the future of this industry, period, in the next 10 to 15 years, just because of the way social media works and this social license to operate thing. And we've got plenty of idiots within the industry that want to put out stupid videos that people that don't know any better watch, and it looks horrific and horrendous, and they're giving us a black eye, and sometimes rightly so, sometimes not. But that kind of stuff is going to ultimately be our downfall, I think. And if I would really encourage you, if you know somebody that's putting out colt starting videos and every damn thing they climb on bucks, like, they need to stop that. We need to get some of these horrific pictures from the English world. All of the noseband with the mouth trying to gap open and 5 buckets of foam hanging out of their mouth and all of this stuff, even at their higher levels. Like we got to sort that out, and we got to do some things about that from within, or we're not going to have the opportunity to fix it. I'm afraid. So Tana also says, Colt, not to cut you off here, but just to expedite things, if I could change one thing in the horse world, what would it be? This may be unique to me, but honestly, it would be people not recognizing the need for them to learn more. And I kind of see like there's two kinds of people in this deal. There's like 1% of you who are ravenous and working your butts off and taking every opportunity to learn. And then there's 99% of you that are like, I got this, I know enough. And, that would be the thing I would see to change. Almost every problem that I come across and that I see, the ultimate ultimate solution to it is more education among the people. And so, to me, that's the clear thing. If we want to solve the problems and we want things to get better, then the general populace has to learn more. And I don't know that we are getting that done. So I wish there was more of a desire or an understanding of the need for more learning and education. And then she also asked thoughts on the whole rescue kill pen issue. So again, this kind of goes back to the uncomfortable horse population deal, but like rescues and kill pens did not exist prior to the ending of horse slaughter bans. So that is essentially a new industry, and there are some legit rescues. I will say it's really gotten to the point with me where I hate even hearing that word, because I think so many cases where someone, air quotes, rescued a horse are not legitimate. The horse was in fine standing. They themselves didn't think it was a great situation, and so they assigned themselves the title of rescuer, and that's bullshit in my opinion. I don't think there's that many horses that actually need rescue. There are some, but I think the term gets used way more than is legitimately should be used. There are a bunch of rescues that aren't legitimate rescues. So like the kill pen thing. I really wish people would stop giving those people their money. We had probably one of the worst in the country in this area, and they would have, it was Thompson's horse lot. They would do horses with bail. So they would, basically that means they went to the sale. They have an allotment of horses they're going to send to Mexico to be slaughtered. So they're there to buy 80 horses or whatever it is. And they find 3 or 4 more that are cute or could ride or whatever. And so they buy those horses additionally, and then they put them up for bail with a sad story, which may or may not be true. And I would say most of the time isn't. And then they're going to get $1,800 for this horse they paid $180 for. And you're just putting money in their pocket, and that's horrendous conditions that they have in. They are in no way, shape, or form a rescue for the most part. Those kill pen deals are the worst people in the horse business, essentially. Like this particular one, I know when you bought the horse, they stopped feeding it. And they wouldn't tell you that they stopped feeding it, but they weren't putting a nickel in that thing that they didn't have to. And so if that horse didn't ship out for another 2 weeks, it was going to be 200 pounds lighter than what the pictures you saw were, because they didn't feed it until it left. And there were so many cases of horses getting sick and dying and stuff. How they legally stayed open, I don't know. But I was personally involved in a bunch of phone calls with the ag department over that, and apparently they knew the letter of the law, exactly how far they could push everything without getting into trouble, or they couldn't prove this or whatever. And they stayed open for years and years and years longer than they should have. I think they've since been run out. But I haven't seen any of those kill pen type deals that didn't just give me the creeps, and I wanted absolutely nothing to deal with. And if people stopped sending them money, they would go away next week. And so that's the big thing, is stop with the pulling on the heartstrings and the sad stories. And those sad stories are bullshit, people. When that horse comes through the ring, they don't have a clue where that thing came from or what happened to it or whatever. They're just completely giving you this fictional tale to emotionally manipulate you, make you feel sorry so that you're going to spend money. That's what's going on there. They're lying, period, full stop. There's not a second scenario there. Those horses come through with no history 95% of the time. They don't know what happened. It's all speculation. And when they get to speculate, they're going to make it to their advantage and not to yours. It's going to be a sad story, whether the real story was sad or not. So, I've seen a bunch of cases where horses had to be rescued from the rescuer. So this is off of the kill pen thing, but to the people trying to operate as a rescue. I will say that in most of the cases that I have seen there, and I have seen quite a few of them, the people that get into the rescue business typically don't know a damn thing about horses, and they're not in a position to have good judgment or experience and so forth. And I've seen more than a few cases where horses had to be rescued from the rescuer. They tend to overdo. They've only got 5 acres and they try to have 35 horses on it. Those kinds of problems run rampant. I've seen a bunch of horses. There was a particular case that farrier friend and a vet friend of mine were seeing too, and I got asked to go take a look at the horse, and this horse had foundered very badly. It needed to be put down. The farrier was telling them that it needed to be put down. The vet was telling them that it needed to be put down, but the rescue lady was convinced that she could save it, and so she spent a couple of $1,000s and prolonged this horse's life in agony another 2 or 3 months before she finally conceded and put the horse down. And anybody with actual sense would have put the horse down, gotten it out of its misery, and then the $2,000 could have been spent legitimately helping horses that could legitimately have been helped. And so, the whole word rescue has a bad taste in my mouth. I have seen more unfortunate things that I wish I hadn't seen with regards to that stuff than I've seen good. Now, there are some good, legitimate rescues out there, but there's some just ridiculous, ignorant stuff. I'll say there's a rescue, I think it was in Texas, and I got involved. My niece had one of these pictures with her show cow that went viral, the cow licking her in the face, and it's been all over the internet. And this rescue chose my niece's picture and put it up on their site, and then came up with this whole bullshit story of what the cow industry is like and how this cow that was like a $40,000 cow. That cow didn't turn into hamburgers. She's out having babies that are expensive babies. And I mean, it was, again, a whole bunch of absolute ignorant lies. And so I sent them a message and stuff that, that's my niece, and you need to take that picture down, or my lawyer's going to be contacting you on Monday, kind of a thing. And they wound up taking it down. But there's just so much lies and bad information out there with that stuff. I don't even really pay attention to it anymore. If it's making you sad, there's a really, really good chance it's emotional manipulation done unethically. I mean, I've talked about, again, I'm not saying your local rescue is a bad organization. It may well be phenomenal. All of the national ones are bad as far as I'm concerned. I don't remember if it was the Humane Society of the United States or PETA. They ran a bunch of ads when we had Hurricane Katrina here in New Orleans on the pets and all of that stuff, and they raised something like $110 million and didn't spend a nickel of it here in Louisiana to actually help the pets. All they did was send a film crew here. They got some horrific footage. They put it on national television, and they used it to fill their bank accounts. And they spent not a nickel of it to actually help the animals. And the Louisiana legislature had to pass a law requiring them to spend at least 10% of what they collected from that on the actual animals here, which they did. There's so much stuff from Humane Society of the United States and PETA and all those big national organizations. They're liars. I mean, the stuff that they tell you that they do is absolutely not their real mission statement. So on that end, if you're gonna volunteer your time or money or anything toward anything in that realm, dogs, cats, horses, whatever, do it on a local level, not on a national level. Because if you are giving money to the national people, their ultimate agenda is no ownership of animals, period. And they are absolutely fine as dictate. I could go on about this for a long time, but they are fine with extinction as an alternative to ownership. They would rather see horses and cows and dogs and cats extinct than owned by people. And I think that's crazy and ludicrous. And that is the reality of their agenda, regardless of what their commercials and the songs that they play might say. So, okay. Sorry this one turned a little dark there at the end. But, Colt, thank you for being a part of the podcast. We'll hear from you on at least one more. So I'll give you the final word. You want to sign off and tell them anything?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, thank y'all. We'll have some pretty cool ones coming up. And, well, I'm not going to tell you who's going to be on them, but we'll have some pretty cool podcasts coming up. If you've liked it, please give us a review on whichever platform you might be on. Please share it with a friend. It has been growing, but it could always grow more. And we think we have pretty cool podcasts, so we certainly appreciate you helping us get that to more people's ears. And hopefully they enjoy it as much as you are. So thank y'all, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.